Hello everybody, and welcome to WTF Hammer Underworlds. Today's video is going to be another Season 1 Warband balancing video. This time we're going to be looking at the Farstriders. And in the description below I've linked the Farstriders review video that I made where I came to draw the following conclusions about this warband. 1. That they have effective melee and attack options, which causes them to be a constant physical threat to enemy fighters. They also have a nice assortment of power cards, which provide a good range of offensive and defensive buffs for this warband. However, their defense is weak until they inspire, having only 1 block defense, and seeing as they also have one of the most difficult inspire mechanics in the game, requiring them to place themselves in a vulnerable position, that being enemy territory, for an entire round until the end phase, while having this low defense just puts them at risk. And 4, these guys have pretty awful objective cards, meaning that they rely heavily on universal card options in order to obtain glory, but since there's only 3 units in this warband, their options are usually pretty limited. So with that in mind, I rated this warband as a C, meaning that they need a buff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be proposing errata suggestions, so modifications we can make to the existing rules for this warband in order to make them better. And I'm also going to recommend some new faction-specific cards that Games Workshop I know is dying to release to help buff this warband as well. I'm going to be starting with the errata, first looking at fighter card errata. So I actually do recommend modifying the fighter cards themselves. Specifically, I recommend that their Inspire condition take effect immediately. So as I mentioned, their Inspire mechanic requires that in an end phase, they be in enemy territory in order to inspire, which means that for an entire round, usually the first round, they have to enter enemy territory and then remain there with 1 shield defense until the round finishes, assuming they don't get pushed out of enemy territory, and only then do they inspire. I would just change the wording of their Inspire mechanic entirely so that it occurs immediately. So this fighter ends an activation in enemy territory. So therefore, if one of these fighters happens to be in enemy territory when an activation ends, whether it's your activation or the enemy's activation, these guys would inspire. And then most likely they would have charged to get into enemy territories. So they won't be able to take advantage of the fact that they may have had some improvements in their attack options. But at least they'd have 2 shield defense and they can't be nicked out of enemy territory and then finish around uninspired. So justification, these guys don't even gain huge bonuses from inspiring, so to have such a difficult inspiring mechanic for such mediocre gains is a bit silly. They can easily be knocked out of enemy territory by cards or attack actions before an end phase, which is just annoying if you want your guys to inspire. And they'll also not likely gain attack benefits until round 2 anyway, because oftentimes you're going to be charging into enemy territory. It's really just to get that 2 shield defense while in enemy territory for the first round, and also to not have your inspire stolen from you when an enemy pushes you out of their territory. And that's actually not it for my fighter card errata suggestions for this warband. I also suggest that all these units get the hunter keyword. Justification is that they're hunters in the lore. I mean, these guys are hunters. That's what they do in Age of Sigmar lore. They're the Vanguard Raptors. And it's also opened them up to many fun universal card options, which is necessary for these guys because their objective cards suck. Next, I have some objective card errata suggestions, which is no surprise because their objective cards are not good. My recommendation would be to make Ranger Strike worth 2 glory points, so nothing crazy. Ranger Strike is a score immediately card if your warband has taken 2 or more enemy fighters out of action in a phase, normally worth 1 glory point, which makes it very unprofitable. So my justification is that it's tough to score, and this would also encourage aggression. So it'd actually be worth putting this card in your deck and then trying to kill enemy fighters, because then you actually score bigger by getting 2 glory instead of 1. And that's actually it for my errata. So just to summarize, for fighter card errata, I suggest that their Inspire condition should take effect immediately, and that all these units get the hunter keyword. And for objective card errata, just something small, just that Ranger Strike be worth 2 glory points, so that's actually worth putting in a deck. So now the next portion of this video, I want to suggest some new faction-specific cards. And I go through this spiel every video, but basically my justification is that deck building requires that you put 12 objective cards in your deck, as well as 20 or more power cards. 10 of those have to be Gambit, 10 of them have to be Upgrade, and you could have more Upgrade than Gambit, but not vice versa. Farstriders have 10 objective cards, 11 Gambits, 10 Upgrades, which means you cannot just take the Farstriders faction-specific deck and play it. You have to mix universal cards in there in order for it to be valid. Therefore, these guys would need 2 new objective cards and 1 new upgrade card in order for them to become valid and play out of the box, which would be very nice considering that all the modern warbands have that capability. So my solution, it's obvious, create 2 useful objective cards and 1 useful upgrade card to support the playstyle of the Farstriders. So what are my suggestions? Well, for objective cards, my first idea would just be an easy surge card. These guys have 2 surge cards. None of them are easy. They should have an easy one. And this is my idea, a surge version of Versatile Fighter, which would be called Flexible Assault. So Versatile Fighter is score 1 glory in the end phase if the same fighter made a ranged and a melee attack in that round. I would just turn it into a score immediately card, make it faction specific, so that you can score this immediately after the same fighter made both an attack action with a range of 1 or 2 and an attack action with a range of 3 or more in the same round. It encourages aggression, it fits into their playstyle. What more do I have to say? So my next idea would be a card that generally supports the Farstrider gameplay style. My recommendation would be a faction-specific conquest, but rather than be worth 2 glory points, could be worth 3 glory points and conditional on 2 survivors, which could be called always advancing. My justification is that it's not overpowering, and it's a bit different from conquest, and actually better than conquest, so it'd be worth putting this in your deck for potential 3 glory point in the 3rd end phase. It'd also be their only score in the 3rd end phase card, because this warband currently doesn't have any, so it would help fill in that gap. So that does it for my objective card suggestions. For upgrade, my idea would be a card to generally support the Farstrider gameplay style. So I know that's a boring idea, but the Farstriders gameplay style is basically advancing, because that's what they need to do to inspire, and shooting range, and maybe attacking melee, ideally killing, which is the gameplay style I tried to have the objective cards that I recommended promote. So for upgrade cards, I'd recommend a faction-specific Glory Seeker, which could be called Keen Edge, since it applies to their ranged attacks as well. My justification is that it's appropriate for taking out the strongest enemy. The lore of this warband is that they're Vanguard Rangers, they're hunters, they try to take out the strong units, so Glory Seeker would help them to do that with their ranged attacks, because it can be combined with their ranged attacks. And typically all Farstrider players include this card in their deck, and this card is going to roll out pretty soon once Season 2 rolls out, so these guys might as well have a faction-specific version of it. And that basically does it. So errata suggestions are above. New faction-specific card summary is as follows. This warband requires 2 new objective cards in order to have a valid deck. I recommend a surge version of Versatile Fighter, which can be called Flexible Assault. I recommend a faction-specific Conquest, but worth 3 glory points and conditional on 2 survivors, which can be called Always Advancing. And finally, these guys require 1 new upgrade card in order to have a valid deck. I would give them a faction-specific Glory Seeker, which would be called Keen Edge, and I'm sure Games Workshop agrees with me and is already in the process of printing these out. So I thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, I ask that you comment below. Please like and subscribe if you like these videos, and next week I'm going to be covering Magor's Fiends.